Well, hello, everybody. It's been a while since we have been all in the same room together. And
Yeah, we had a falling out, and Brandon has seen the error of his ways.
What? Wait a minute. Anyways, today we're going to be talking about, and this is, bear with me. The way we're trying to word this is still very complicated, but it's something that I feel like we didn't give good enough justice to the last time. But the topic is, how is it that two people can look at a moral dilemma and see two completely different things about it, where one seems like it should be obvious, but the other person thinks, no, that's a bad idea, and vice versa. How does that happen? That's what we're talking about today. Well, welcome back to thoughtraid, a show where we take on thoughts and find better ways of thinking about them. I'm Brandon, this is Tim, and today the topic that we're going over is how two people can be looking at any one given moral dilemma and see two completely different things. The question is, are both things right? Is one of them right? Is one of them wrong? Like, how do you navigate a situation where, like, we're on a topic, like maybe it's still something that people talk about all the time. Pineapple.
I was going to say Happy Pride Month.
I was going to say pineapple on pizza, but okay.
They're kind of similar, I guess.
I wasn't prepared for that. Oh my God, Tim, you have no idea how much I have missed this. It's been
being in my presence.
That yes, being in your presence, but also just sitting here and we have a topic and I'm not playing a game. I miss that. I do enjoy playing games. I also enjoy doing stuff of this nature. Oh gosh, things of that nature. It comes out
things
again.
Of that. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Long-time listeners, you'll catch that joke.
God. Anyways, so welcome back. It's so good to see your face because I'm totally
to see your lens.
To see because I'm looking you in the lens.
So the topic, I guess we'll just, can two people, how'd you word this? Two people disagreeing on what is moral both be right? It's a big question, especially in faith circles, and this is a topic that a lot of people who, atheists and people who are more so on the left side agnostically, have an issue with Christianity or religion in general, I guess, because it's like, and I also guess that this is where a lot of universalism comes from, where it's like, okay, your truth is your truth. And I hear people say stuff like that all the time, speak your truth. And Brandon and I are of the same mind that there is one truth. And if that hits you the wrong way, understand that we're not saying that we fully disagree with you, that we don't like you, that whatever. Basically, we believe that there is one, just like 1 + 1 = 2. That, I mean, that's the truth, whether you like it or not. And so there are some things out there we just don't know the answer for yet.
Right.
And there are some things that we know that it's like, okay, this is most likely the answer. And so we want to offer that from a posture of, well, let's figure it out together. But I think what this makes me think of, hey, Zap, what this makes me think of is back, I think it was the Super Bowl where there were the Carolina Panthers and the Patriots. I'm not sure. Maybe you guys can...
Not a big football fan, but go on.
Logan Paul podcast mode. I haven't seen any Logan Paul podcasts. Have you?
No, I've not.
Yeah.
Who is that? I'm sorry.
I don't know. But anyways, so I had Christian friends that were for the Panthers, and I had Christian friends who were for the Patriots, and they were both, on their knees, dear Lord, Jehovah, whatever, Jesus, Yahweh, whatever you want to call them. Dear God, would you help my team win? And so the question is, who does God love more? Right? You can't have two winners in a Super Bowl and only one of them's gonna win. And so it's like, okay, well, which prayer is gonna be answered? That's a similar question to this.
Yeah.
Or, for instance, with me and Brandon, we've come to the same conclusions in very different ways, and we've had God tell us two completely different things that were seemingly both true.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like we were just having a conversation about this previously outside. You are more calm than I am and more rational than I am, and I am more emotional and very in tune with my emotions. Like, if I feel it, I'm going to feel it, and no one's going to stop me from feeling that emotion. Like, that's just who I am. But yet, both of us have come to Christ despite the differences in who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And the same God I serve is the same God you serve, and he is both rational and emotional, apparently, because he's able to speak to both of our hearts, if you think about it.
So Zap says, so what you're trying to say is every single Super Bowl should be a tie because otherwise God is biased. And that's what it seems like, unless you're a Panthers fan, because the Panthers suck.
Wow.
Not a fan. But, it's, and that's the question, and we're talking about this from a Christian perspective. Zap, I don't know if you're a Christian. And from our perspective, it's like, okay, well, if I pray for this thing and it doesn't happen, does that mean that God doesn't love me? Did I not have enough faith? What if Brandon prayed for something that was mutually exclusive to what I was trying to pray for, and both happened? Does that mean that there are multiple truths, or there are multiple gods? Does it mean that, like, how do you reconcile that?
That's in that the way that you're specifically pulling up. I'm not quite sure. Like, from that perspective, I don't know what to say. But I feel like there are some other things that it's easier to say, okay, well, these two things can't both be right. Like, again, if you're going to try to go through a situation and you're counting.
Excuse me.
You're counting up from, okay, so here's one phone, and here's another phone. We don't just suddenly have 3 phones sitting on the table. You could say there are 3 phones, but there is only 2 phones currently sitting here on this table. Not both of us are right in that situation.
Also, hello, Austin. It's good to see you.
It's been a while. Hello. Also, it's good to see you from this perspective when I'm actually in front of the camera, not playing a video game. I'm so excited to be here. I'm just going to state that again. And wait, Zap is saying family is me, not really.
Panther
No judging,
fans.
though. Oh, I see.
Basically wrong.
Oh, I see. Family is wrong, but not me.
Yeah. So, going back, can two people disagreeing on what is moral both be right? And so let's talk. I want to just jump right into something controversial.
Okay, let's do it.
Because it's Pride Month.
Yes, it
I
is.
guess happy Pride Month, everybody.
Question mark.
So let's talk about this subject because it's really big, and there's a huge disparity between, once again, from our perspective, because we're Christians, the Christian world and the world of LGBT. And I say world, not attributing people to that, but the beliefs and everything surrounded by it. So I'm not calling anybody out in particular.
Yeah.
And within the Christian community, there's also disparities in belief, right? So
True.
Some Christians believe, a big question, can you be homosexual and have a relationship with Jesus, right? And so can we both be wrong in this, or is there an absolute truth? Or can God take you to a truth by making you seemingly wrong for a time, if that makes sense?
I think I see what you're saying. You're saying, can God lead you on a journey where he allows you to go into something that is wrong and allows you to sit in that for a time before he finally reveals this is wrong, but the whole time you thought it was right kind of thing. Is that what you're saying?
Kind of. So, for instance, there's this person that I've been listening to, and he's, I guess you could say, he's a pastor, but like a Christian leader.
Mm.
And he's leaning into the stance that being transgender is more a position of mental health and who really cares. Now, from a Christian perspective, it's like, ooh, that's sacred ground. You can't say stuff like that, right? Or kind of like we have a friend who is, and I'm not going to name them just for respect, obviously, but we have a friend who is considering taking a more agnostic route who's currently Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, and if I'm veering off topic, I'm sorry. I'm just all over the place with this idea.
Your thoughts are here, 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 here.
Yeah. And I promise we'll bring it full circle. If not, Brandon will help me out.
Okay, yes. I'm
but
here for it.
This friend, much like my story, is leaning into the, well, let me question everything side. right?
Mhm.
And from a lot of Christian background, it's like you should just have faith and not question things. You should just believe, right? So much that much the chagrin of people who are just more on the faith train, oh, that's threatening, right? But is this person going down that path? Are they wrong or are they right? Is God? What if God's leading them that way? What if God's leading me this way? Are both correct?
Oh, I see where you're going with
Yeah,
this.
and kind of like the homosexuality thing, right? Can somebody be convicted that homosexuality is wrong? But also, on the other side, can somebody be convicted that homosexuality is right? And are both true? And is that universalism?
Yeah, no, I think what you were previously discussing where a person is fully convicted of something and God is allowing them to go through that conviction, but that doesn't mean the thing is right, is more of the correct answer there than specifically of there are two rights in that situation, that very specific situation that you're talking about. Because there are other situations where it is legitimately gray. I can't say everything is black and white, but there are some things where it is legitimately gray. And there is also probably things where it is right for a time because, and it goes back to your original point where God is allowing them to go through this thing specifically so that way when they come to the other side, no one can steal what they learned through the process from them.
Yeah.
So like I'll give you a for instance. And so we're going to take the counter back to zero. The infamous...
porn. Let me turn up the AC. I'm really hot. Are you?
Yeah, I'm a little warm.
I'm sorry, guys. I'll be right back. Brandon, I can still hear you.
While he does that, I'll tell you the story of the process. So, like, I think there's a lot of people out there that are convicted that specifically, obviously, that porn is wrong, but more specifically that, like, at least in Christian circles, that masturbation is a wrong thing. And for me, I went through a definite period of time where I legitimately felt like God was like, this is not a problem for you. We're going to focus on other things. We're going to focus on the fear. We're going to focus on how you view yourself. We're going to focus on your confidence around other people. We're not going to deal with this. I don't have a problem with this right now. Neither should you. Right. But many people around me in Christian circles were like, Brandon, this is clearly a sin. You should stop this because X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. I legitimately feel like God has given me freedom in this space so long as it doesn't turn into actual pornography. And so I went through that for years until recently, within the past year, maybe now. I haven't been keeping exact track for how long this has been. At least a year, if not more. God's like, okay, now that's done. We're not doing that anymore. We're not looking at porn, and we are also not masturbating to anything at all. And I'm like, okay. And so now we've gone through this, and I've had to grapple with this. But I feel like in the process of him saying this is okay for this time and this is no longer okay, it's a whole different experience to me now, having been given the freedom to go through that than if it was just wrong the entire time.
Ooh, so you said something that I want to touch on very intentionally, but real quick, I want to highlight what Austin said. Austin said, you can say it's not right or wrong, it just is. And you can also say everything is right just because it exists. I don't know what I think about the second part of that, but I fully agree with the first part. You can say it's not right or wrong, it just is. And I think when it comes to relationships, there's a lot of, or I don't want to say just, I'll say relationships because that can apply to relationships with ourselves, our self-concept and stuff. There are a lot of filters that we view the world through. And there are a lot of things that we compare ourselves to, and that's just a natural process. Through the early cognitive development stages in life, we're comparing our behaviors to our parents' behaviors, our caretakers, because they are the source of our life. And we think, okay, well, because these people gave us life and they're protecting me, I'm going to model their behaviors.
Right.
And that's developed within the first 2 to 5 years of life, right?
Right.
And then, other Austin, hello.
Hey.
Zap said, you are a brave man for talking about this on a YouTube stream. Well,
yes.
Zap, I don't know if you've ever watched our streams before, but what we do in Thought Raid is we take all this stuff that people normally think about
and just put it out there.
Don't think about.
Or do or don't.
The stuff that people think about but don't talk about.
That's more accurate.
And we talk about it. We poke the ogre.
We do. because let me just take before we go into what you're about to say with that. I want to give you a little piece of the culture of thought rate and what we're trying to do here. One of the biggest pet peeves that I have is when leaders pretend to be perfect. What?
He just said, I'm sure the TOS loves that.
The TOS? What is TOS?
Terms of service.
Oh, I'm sure.
Canceled.
Well, I'm not saying this is for kids, so they can't technically cancel it, I guess.
We should make this an 18 plus only stream.
Oh, God.
Brandon, show me some of your thoughts.
Anyways, focusing.
We have an only thoughts page.
Only.
Go back about 2 months. You'll see what I'm saying.
We actually do have it's called Only Thoughts, and it's the same exact logo as OnlyFans, but it just says Only Thoughts. Anyways, focusing. So one of my biggest pet peeves about leadership is when leaders pretend that they have it all together.
Yeah.
Because they don't. Leaders really, truly don't have it all together. They have a lot of good pieces to the puzzle that the average person may be missing, and that's why they're a leader and they have something to give to people. But at the end of the day, they're still figuring out life just like the rest of us. And my goal is I want you to see my process and what I'm going through so that way you don't feel alone in your own struggles. Because I know for the longest time I used to think that I was alone in my struggles and what I dealt with. I thought no one else dealt with what I did, and I need to deal with it without bringing it to another person lest I have zero friends and everyone hate me. And that is not reality. And the reality is a lot of people deal with the exact same thing regardless if they're very smart or they're very emotionally smart or they're just average, whatever. We all kind of have similar struggles together. Not all of the exact same things, but I just want to create a safe space by being a safe person, by letting you know, hey, here's where I'm at, so that you know what that could look like. And if you want to model it, great. If you don't, that's fine too. I really feel convicted to just live open and honest with as much as I can safely, because there's some things I don't want to talk about for the safety of other people, but as much as I can, I will. So,
yeah, there's just a part of yourself that you're supposed to preserve for intimate spaces.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not like I'm going to be like a complete and total glass house, but I am going to try to be more than just a cave with
Well, just
little
authentic.
Yeah,
really.
being authentic, using verbiage to describe all that.
And with that, Zap, if you look in the the information down below, there's our Discord channel. There's actually a suggestion box. So if there's something that you've been thinking about that you've never had the safety to talk about, or would like for people to talk about, join our Discord, drop it in the suggestion box, or just like hang out and talk with us sometime. That'd be cool.
Yes.
D'Onofrio said, actually, do you want to read it?
I felt the same way that I feel bad about a portion of my life and want change, but I felt like God wanted me to trust him for change, and he's working on a different part of me first. So same. Yeah, and so I'm glad that you brought that up initially, Tim, because I really do think that like when you're finding truth, sometimes God takes you, he allows this one area to seemingly fall to the wayside because he's instead addressing bigger areas, so that way when we come back to it, we actually have a better structure to deal with the area that we've otherwise been stressing the crap over.
Well, also, if you look at the biblical history and just look at the culture of things. So I'm in a sociology class, so I'm thinking about this stuff a lot. There are a lot of times, actually, let me give a preface to this. I had somebody recently come to me and say, well, if you're a Christian, then why do you mix your clothing? Why do you eat animals with hooves, right? And there are a lot of things that we believe culturally to be right or wrong that might not actually be right or wrong. Mm-hmm. You know, a cultural right might be a truth wrong, and a cultural wrong might be a truth right, whatever. All that to say, with a lot of this stuff, there are many ways that God takes us through things to sanctify us. And just for definition's sake, sanctification is taking you from unhealthy to healthy. That's all that is. So when I say sanctified, I mean, okay, the process of getting healthy. Mm-hmm. And more definition, healthy is being aligned with truth. There's a lot of ways. I'll use Lizzo, for example. You know who that is?
I've heard the name, but I don't know.
She's a pop star
okay.
right now, or R&B. I don't know what genre, but somebody on my Facebook page posted a picture of Lizzo getting on a plane, and you saw her in her glory, like a lot of her. And they said, this is beautiful. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, so there's this cultural movement that says thick women are beautiful just for whatever reason. And I'm thinking to myself, well, if you look at the science behind it, she's obese and she's going to die much sooner because she's unhealthy. That's the truth of it. So basically there's this cultural stigma. Well, there was a cultural stigma against being obese, and now it's swinging the other way where they're glamorizing being obese, and that's communicating, oh, well, as a culture, we like the idea, and so much that we esteem the idea of being obese, and it's beautiful, which communicates, okay, well, don't be healthy. How you are as you are is good. You just need to own it.
See, and that's an interesting situation morally to look at. That's a little more complex, I think. So this is one that's been brought up a couple times because of Jordan Peterson, because of when he made this whole post about on Twitter about the
Pronouns?
No. About the lady in the
I don't follow his Twitter, so
I know, but
and if
I'm
you
trying to
guys know,
think.
let us know what it says exactly.
Sports Active? No, what is it? Magazine.
Activism?
There's a magazine, something to do with
Sports Illustrated?
Sports Illustrated.
Oh, Brandon, you young person.
I'm sorry. Anyways, he made this post on Twitter about, because the model they used was this overweight model, and they're like, she's courageous, beautiful, whatever. I feel like I walked into the wrong classroom. What does that mean? Anyways, and so he got on fire for that. And I understand why he got lit on fire for that, because the difficult part with navigating the beauty of a woman who's overweight is because, one, it's not that she's not beautiful. The point is not is she or is she not beautiful, because I think honestly that's not like a black and white truth. There's going to be some people that's going to find her to be absolutely beautiful, and she is, and who she is could be a very beautiful person, but there's also the fact that she might not be in a healthy weight, because I do know there are some people that just legitimately, they're very active, they eat well, but they retain weight more than the average person does somehow, some way. I don't know how that works. But then there's a lot of people that don't have that problem, where they just retain weight, and it's because they're eating unhealthy. That's not good. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, in one hand, it's not, I don't think you can just say she's ugly because she has weight. But on the other hand, I don't think you should say she's healthy, because that's a different thing.
I want to springboard off this, because this is a big Christian faux pas that a lot of Christians don't acknowledge they're committing a faux pas. And let me go through these comments, because this builds on what I'm going to say. Okay. So Austin just said, because there's a place of trusting God to change you where you can't change yourself. So it takes faith to trust God to know that to know what needs to change in your life first. And then Jaffe said, right, Tim, whatever you are, own it, be comfortable with it, live long or live little, be happy living. So the reason I wanted to read those first is because there's something in Christian faith, if you guys aren't aware or don't know what we're talking about, there's something called the Holy Spirit, which we believe is inside of us. That's a remnant of God that it's like a liaison. And that's where conviction comes from, right? So for instance, recently we did a podcast about swearing. Brandon feels convicted about it. I do not feel convicted about it.
That is true.
And so who's right or wrong, right?
That's
a
good question.
I want to specifically highlight Austin Jaffe's comment. Whatever you are, own it, be comfortable with it, live long or live little, be happy living. And I want to go back to my initial comment. So I'm putting a lot of stuff on the whiteboard right now. Bear with me. About homosexuality, transgenderism, and should people change for the sake of getting to heaven, right? Because Winston-Salem, that's where we live. It's Pride Month. There's these pride rallies downtown, and there's always people that are at each other's throats, always, and primarily LGBT versus Christian, vice versa. And so, like, Ariane, my wife, told me something really cool. When she was in YWAM, there were these two girls that came into the sanctuary, and they were dressed. They were not dressed modestly. Let's say that. And somebody went to the leader of the organization or one of the leaders of the events and said, "Aren't you going to say anything to them?" And the leader of the event, I don't know what her name was, she said, "Why would I say something to them? One, they didn't ask me. And two, it's the job of the Holy Spirit to convict somebody." And I think that's so interesting. So for instance, I have a lot of glaring issues in my own life that I have not felt convicted to address.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But they're there. What if God doesn't care about them the way that our culture cares about them? That's a scary thought. Like, what if, and I'm just posing a hypothetical, if this irritates you, put your Bibles away. What if being homosexual comes far second to Jesus just wanting a relationship, to be on speaking terms with somebody? Does that mean that because they're homosexual, they don't get into heaven because they don't qualify above their sin? Or can they actually have a relationship with Jesus? And that's two sides that could be, well, this is my truth, this is my truth. Well, who's right? Right? But what if somebody engages with a relationship with Jesus and 40 years down the road, God's worked on different things in their heart, like Austin D'Onofrio was talking about. There's something right now that God's trying to teach me that's a prequel to the final chapters. And you've said this multiple times. And Zap, like I would encourage you to go back and look at the other talks we've had on this, because porn has been a topic of conversation between me and Brandon for going on 2 years now, and it keeps creeping back up. And you can tell your side of it if you want. I'm just going to sum it up. Brandon gets these points where he's like, okay, I don't want porn in my life. I don't want to be addicted to it. And great, I'm doing great. Oh, I'm doing it again. And every time, and I think this is so beautiful because I didn't think about this before. Every time you, as you're going through it, you tell me, Tim, God is uprooting something else in my life to help me with this, when I thought that the one thing I needed issue with, or had an issue with and needed help with, was not looking at porn. Well, maybe there are other factors to it that I don't see through my cultural lens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like going back to what I was talking about in the beginning of my process. And it's kind of embarrassing, to be honest, sometimes talking about it again on ThoughtRaid, because you've seen me from the beginning and I've talked about my victories, and then I go through these valleys. I'm like, well, what am I providing to these people? But I guess in the end of the day, I'm just showing you my process. That some people, they get done with it like that, and other people is an up and down valley. The first problem that I had that kept me from really stepping away from porn for the longest time until I went to college was the fear of rejection. But I didn't know how to put it to words. So at the time, the way I looked at it was I didn't have a lot of people my age that were friends with me, and I did not want to lose the few amount of friends I already had by talking about this addiction that I had. And so once I talked about that with people my age and they accepted me through it and loved me and helped me, that broke off the addiction like that, because immediately the whole thought of they're just going to reject me and I'm going to be alone melted. But once that was taken care of, I didn't understand, though, that it was the fear of rejection that was definitely keeping me in bondage to porn.
Yeah, you were just thinking, oh, I have figured this porn thing out.
Yes, exactly. And so, and God didn't really reveal that to me in the beginning. Instead, what he did is he worked on other things. Like he worked on like being more confident to look at a handsome person and not like look away, or be afraid to look at them in the eyes. Like I had to work with that, and I had to recognize, I had to re-script my brain into knowing that, like, okay, I don't need to keep confessing negatively over myself. Like how I view myself and what I say about myself is important. I'm not a victim. I'm not an addict. This is not who I am. So it was very important for me to kind of change up what I was saying about myself. And then after that, then he had to show me that anxiety was a triggering factor towards porn, and that if I stopped being anxious about everything, that it would be a lot easier to manage that. So I focused on that for a time. And then I focused on dealing with like how confident I was around women, and had to work on that for a period of time. And then after all that and having success, I crashed. And I hit the most recent years where I just felt like I had zero motivation not to look at porn. And then over time, that's where eventually God was like, Brandon, and he did it through a conversation with my parents, which I wasn't even expecting. It's all linked to rejection. Every time you feel rejected, you lose the energy necessary to stand against it, because he had worked off so many things in my own heart, showing me that I can do this, that it sucks to stand against temptation, but if you resist the enemy, he will flee from you. I just, my brain and my body's not going to figure it out, but my spirit is willing. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. He's taught me all these things, and so finally, kind of sinewed it up together recently. And now we're doing again good.
Right. And the thing I was going to highlight earlier, like that piece, I was like, oh, this ties everything together on the whiteboard. You said freedom. Right. And I think it's interesting that our country, if you look at it through a cultural lens, most people say our country is a mess because of freedom. Everybody has the freedom to say what they want when they want, to do what they want. And everybody's worldviews are clashing together because universalism, speak your truth, right? And that's dangerous because when you speak your truth, a lot of people approach it either from a place of apathy, like I don't care what happens to these people, like Lizzo, for instance, right? My perspective is, sure, she's a pretty girl, but the fact is she's obese and she's gonna, she's gonna have a lot of complications. And I really wouldn't go to somebody else and say, hey, this is a standard you should aspire. Like if somebody's obese, it's like, I don't want you to die. So it's no longer a matter of being beautiful, because you can be beautiful and unhealthy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it needs to be a suggestion like Lizzo, you're kind of unhealthy and you're setting an example for people by saying I'm big and beautiful, that it's okay to be obese, which it is. We live in a free country and that's her prerogative. But if I went to her and I said that stuff, the issue that we'd run into where it's like, well, what's right, my way or her way? I think that's a moot point, because much like Christianity, a lot of people get wrong is everything, every piece, the climax of Christianity is invitation. It's like, here's a suggestion. You can take this if you want. And I invite you, but it's your choice. Like if you go back to the Garden of Eden, there's the tree of good and evil, or tree of knowledge of good and evil, and the tree of life. And the crazy thing is our Creator dropped Adam and Eve in that garden and said, you get to choose.
Yeah.
And so when we look at what's right for me and what's right for you, like our journey through pornography has been very different. Very different. And I could look at your story and say, well, Brandon, just do it my way. Or Brandon could say, Tim, because you did it your way, you may not have actually dealt with everything.
I would never say that, but I could theoretically say that,
but
yes.
If you look at it from the lens of, okay, well, how can we both be morally right on this? We can't both be morally right. It's not as simple as that. And so the climax of our conversation is this. It's, can two people be morally right if they have differentiating viewpoints? And I think it depends on what your standard is.
Yeah,
it really does. Are you looking through the eyes of social media? Well, that standard's going to change. And so what's right now is not going to be right in 10 years.
Yeah. And I think here's another area that I think gets people tied up when trying to navigate these things. There is a degree of sensitivity you need going into a situation where you're talking about something that's moral with a person, where you're being sensitive to where they're currently at, because they may not be ready for that truth, and just hitting them with that truth over and over again is only going to push them further and further away. Doesn't mean it shouldn't be said, but the way that you say it, the timing of which you say it, stuff of that nature, there is a time for everything. It says in the Bible.
That sounds pretty biblical, Brandon.
It is. Wow.
And also attributing to your story, one of my favorite scriptures that addresses this is the Lord trims back all the branches that don't produce fruit, and he prunes the ones that do. And that's constantly what my life has been. Like, for instance, my boundaries with people are much different now at 37 than my boundaries were at 20. Like, I was just looking for branches in general. Now I've got a bunch of branches, and I can choose, like, okay, which ones are not producing fruit in my life? I have choice. I have freedom. I could choose the unhealthy ones, and I could choose to cut off I could choose to maintain the unhealthy ones just because they're comfortable and safe and low to the ground, and I can cut off the healthy ones just because, well, they're not as safe for me, or I'm not as comfortable. But in the long term, like, what's that going to produce? And that's the result of freedom. That's the result of choice, because a lot of times we choose what we feel instead of what's healthy.
Yeah. Well, it's painful, honestly, when you're trying to navigate truth, because along with navigating it is, could I be wrong? And if I'm wrong, how many other more places am I wrong at? and I don't want to touch that. That's
Our
like
brains work so differently.
that's how not for you. I don't you don't feel that?
No, I'm like, grace. Oh, I did this wrong. Okay, let me just keep going. But like, I like how your brain critically thinks even to a fault. Mine doesn't do that naturally. I have to engage it.
That's what I have to navigate. Welcome to my brain.
Yeah.
But then again, there's so many things I'm like actively working on too all the time. I guess there's an upside and a downside to that. There's the downside is I overthink, and sometimes I got to pull back and not think so hard. Like right now in my current period of life. Yay me.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, it's difficult. Regardless if you think like I do or you do, it's still going to be hard to be wrong. Like being wrong is painful. So having to navigate that and then go into the argument or conversation with a person and they're not seeing your way and you're not seeing theirs. And then you have that looming thought in the back of your head, are they right? Am I wrong? What's going on here? Like, why are we not seeing the same thing on that matter? Like that's difficult to go through.
Yeah, but I think so. If this is you, which it has been me a large portion of my life, when you engage in conflict with people that have different views from you, if you start thinking pridefully that I'm being threatened, I'm being defensive right now, I need to be defensive because this other person just doesn't have it together, plus I need to tell them that they don't have it together. I like metaphors. Just picture sitting at a table like we are, right? And if we really see people the way Jesus saw us, we're all made in the image of God, and our goal is to love people, which I don't want to confuse with love is love, because that can be used in ways that are enabling. We can go into that in a future podcast if you guys want. But loving people oftentimes, especially through a cultural lens, does not culturally look like it's loving. Like boundaries, for instance. I have boundaries with certain people in my life where it's like, I need you to stay over there. And they're like, well, why can't I come on your property? Do you not love me? No, I love you. That's why I'm putting up this boundary.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make sense to them because where they're at right now, they haven't learned that lesson of boundaries. So what looks like their truth and my truth, while it may be the same on the same trajectory, we're just at different places. And I can't have expectations that they're going to understand my side because they're not me. And so if I go to a pride rally, taking it back full circle once again, and I start saying, you need to change everything about your life. Well, there's a scripture that talks about don't call out the speck in your neighbor's eye if you have a log in your own eye. It's like, why? Well, okay, well, hold your horses. Why do I care in the first place? I'm called to love these people and to let the Holy Spirit do the convicting. If that is my modus operandi, then why am I telling them to live their lives? They didn't ask me, right? Jesus served people by washing their feet unless they came to him first. He just served people. That's all he did. He loved people and gave to them. And then when they started asking questions, he started providing answers of truth.
Yeah, there's 2 times where he provided answers of truth, actually, when I'm thinking about it, at least in this moment, and there could be others. But the 2 major areas where he provided truth was when they came to him and when they were actively hurting someone else. So in the case of the Pharisees, he would respond to them because, and to be fair, they also came to him anyways, and they were trying to accuse him of stuff. And
because they were fearful that they were wrong.
Yeah, well, I guess, or prideful to think that they were the font of all knowledge. Either way, it could have been both, honestly. But however they got to where they got. He didn't just wait in those situations. Like, he had this situation where, well, I mean, I'll have to go back over and look over that again, come to think of it. But I don't think it's only been when people came to him that he would speak, because he definitely came to people. He did intentionally show up where there was a man possessed by thousands upon however many demons. He actively came and showed up in Samaria to the woman at the well.
Okay, so I want to address this too, because we talked about this past week while I was at that conference.
Okay.
And sorry guys, I know we're going a little bit over, but we were talking about real relationship, like real intimate conversation between friends, because there are a lot of people who have relationships that are just superficial. And Zap, you talked about the word empty a second ago. A lot of people feel empty even though they have tons of relationships. And I'm in school to be a therapist. And so the question that was brought up was, if people actually engage in relationship with one another and talk about how you're feeling and what you're doing and supporting one another, then what's the purpose of a therapist? Right? Because that's all therapists do. We address, okay, well, let's get to the root of stuff. Let's talk about how you're feeling. Let's clear out the dirt, and let's build a good foundation that's healthy from a place of, okay, what are you trying to, like, really, where are you right now? Do you want to address this? If not, I'm not going to touch that. I'm not going to impose, right? And so when you're talking about, morally and being right, like, what does it mean to overstep your bounds? Like, if somebody is like the guy that had all the demons, if somebody is cutting their wrists, am I overstepping my bounds morally to stop them? That's what do you know who Dr. Kevorkian is? Does
No,
that sound familiar?
not by
Well,
name.
if you're a 90s kid, back in the 90s, late 80s, there was a guy named Dr. Kevorkian, and he had this business model where people would call in or have some kind of correspondence with him, and he would help them formulate a plan to commit suicide. That was his model. And so it was very controversial.
Clearly.
And so it's like, okay, well, somebody's doing something that's directly detrimental to their health, but where is that scale? Like, how? And as a nation, we're called to, or we have the, I want to say freedom, but I don't think that's the right word. We judge those things by saying this is right, this is wrong, this is unlawful, this is. They're called sanctions, punishments for social breaking social norms. Right, the social norms which are backed by law or the government, which are laws, and so like, when do you actually step in with somebody, right? And Jesus modeled that, because that person they did not have their own mental faculties, and I have family that's in mental health, and there are a lot of times where people don't have their faculties when you're a behavioral health
Right.
worker,
Right.
and so like, do you just let them say, hey, I need help? Or do you actually help them when they're banging their head against the wall?
Yeah.
What's morally correct there?
Yeah. I feel like that's where you have to pay attention, and like, that's one of those, that's an interesting thing to navigate, honestly. I don't have a direct answer. The most obvious one is if what they're doing is directly affecting other people, so your problem is becoming other people's problem, there's something to do there. That makes more sense. But then what if it's not affecting other people and it's only really just affecting them?
Yeah, but
What
what
do
if
you do
it's going to
there?
lead to their death or demise, or lead to, like, I have a family member who's making a lot of poor decisions right now, but they haven't asked me to step in and offer them advice. So what do? Do I just impose myself and say, hey, watch out, because they're a family member?
I feel like that's at least the way I would navigate that. I don't know what the right answer is, but the way that I would navigate that is I would make some attempts to reach out to them genuinely and be like, hey, I'm noticing this is a problem. Can I help you? Can I be
They don't
there
wanna
for
hear it.
you? And after doing that so many times, then I'd have to step back, because if they don't want to have anything to do with it, then I can't. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink.
Yeah, and I think that's the answer to the question. Can two people disagreeing on what's moral both be right? And it all comes to where, and I'll say my piece and I'll be done, because whatever.
Sure.
My answer to this, and I want to hear your side. And guys, I want to hear your side too.
True.
Like, after this talk and what you've heard and what you thought, do you think people can disagree on morality and both be right? I think it comes down to where people are in life, where they're at in their walk, and what their guidestone is. Because people's guidestones are all over the place. Think, Greta Thunberg. I think that's how you say your name.
Greta Thunberg. I don't
Greta,
know.
the young climate activist from Sweden or something.
Yeah.
From her perspective, she's a champion of climate control. That's because she's been steeped in an environment where this is a thing for her, right?
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in backwoods Davie County, above the poverty line, but not super far. My family made poor decisions, and so my big thing is helping people identify poor behaviors in their life that lead to destructive habits. And so, well, why am I not vying for climate control? Is she wrong for championing that instead of what afflicted me and my family? Which is right, because you can't spend your life doing everything.
No, obviously, no. And here's the thing: not everyone's going to be able to deal with every actual problem that ever existed. You can't. We're all finite. We cannot do that. I'm only going to really have the mental space right now to deal with things like, helping people be truthful with what they actually feel about things, or, making sure that someone feels loved and encouraged. That's what I can do. Can I focus on, do I have the mental space to deal with the plastic in the ocean, or the murders that's happened in Texas or something? No, I don't really have the space to deal with that. And that's a unique problem that we in this generation have to deal with that our previous generations haven't had to, because they're not as interconnected as we all are because of the internet. I now have to be aware of things I will never probably touch. It feels like I can. It feels like I should be able to fix these issues because I'm aware of these issues, so I can think about these issues and maybe I can come up with a solution, but I'm still just as distant from it as my grandparents were and my great-grandparents and them before. I mean, we only have so much of a sphere that we can influence unless God opens the door for us to do more. And before I get to my thought on that, I want to see what Zap is saying there. He says, I think absolutely nobody thinks the same. Everyone has different views. Some people may think dogs are terrible because they had traumatic experiences with them. Others may think not. Nobody's wrong. I mean, like, I agree with that all the way up, and now I'm going to go into my perspective. I agree with that all the way up to the very end of nobody's wrong. That's where I kind of draw the line, because there is right and there is wrong. I do think that people have reasons as to why they got to where they got, which you were describing. Like, what if I was attacked by a dog when I was young? Of course, I'm not going to naturally be comfortable with dogs unless I just have no fear. So, like, yeah, there's a reason behind how I've gotten to where I've gotten, and it's legitimate, and it should not be diminished. But that doesn't mean I'm right. That doesn't mean that I should go murdering everyone's dog because one dog bit me. Like, that's not right, even if that was an impulse within me because of my background. And the slippery slope of no one's wrong is, if no one's wrong, then the people that say people are wrong is also right, and therefore that invalidates that whole standpoint. So I think that it depends on the situation. I think there are lots of situations where both people can be right to varying degrees. I don't think everything is black and white. I think there's a lot of gray, and you have to recognize that to properly navigate it.
Sorry, Baptists. I'm just kidding. Not really.
Zap says his head hurts. I'm sorry. But anyways, so there's a lot of gray, but...
Bye, Zap.
See ya. Oh, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it. Thanks for joining us today. But concluding, but I do think there is a right and a wrong in certain things, and I think that not everyone is going to be there for it at the right time. Like, some people, they've got to focus on other things. There's a right time to deal with what's right, and there's a wrong time. So it may be okay for them in the moment, but that doesn't mean that what they're doing is absolutely right or universally correct. It just means that that's a unique situation that they are navigating with God or without God, but it's something that they're going through, and you need to be patient and listen to figure out, is this something that needs to be addressed or something that could be dealt with another time?
And also, have I been invited into the space of addressing this?
Yes, because that's the easiest way to navigate that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, before we wrap up, Austin, I don't know if you guys have had your baby yet, but happy Father's Day. They're having a baby. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah.
Congratulations ahead of schedule. Hey. That's exciting.
I don't know if you're still in Winston. I don't think you are. And sorry I missed you.
We do miss you, though. It has been a hot second. But now I'm sure you've got a lot to deal with and preparation to do.
Isn't it weird how when people have babies, it's like they surpass me in life? Do you feel that? Like our friend Lee just had a baby, and it's like before they were married and before they had a child, it's like, okay, we're here. And now it's like he's 20 years in the future for me.
Well, I mean, it's a different life season.
Yeah.
So, like, that's... But there's a graceful way to navigate. That's for another thought raid. I want to save that for another... But I have a whole thought connected to that. So, anyways, yeah.
Austin, while we have you, what do you need right now? I don't know. I feel compelled to If you feel comfortable saying that,
You don't have to tell us on stream. You can tell us on Discord or send us an email.
Yeah.
Or a message.
I don't know. Therapy school has been interesting because I used to even like recently think that I have things figured out and I've got all things that people need. But I really want to get into the posture of asking, okay, well, what do you need right now? Because that's often indicative of, that question is indicative of people that are actually listening and care instead of people that are just saying things for their own pride. And plus it allows for the invitation to share in life with people instead of assuming.
I also took it in a different way. Austin, if there is one thing that you need in preparation for having your baby, let us know because we might be able to get it for you. I want to throw that out there. It's been a hot second since we.
Oh, that's right. We have a bank account, don't we?
We do. I like to be generous. So let us know about that one too. If there's any kind of needs, then maybe we can kind of sow a seed towards. Just email us, text us, Discord us, however which way you want to go about it. Let us know about that.
Wait, let me see this comment. What is a baby going to do with a Ferrari?
What?
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
What?
He's like, I need a Ferrari, guys.
Wait. I don't have that kind of money.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, if you guys enjoyed this stream, I just want to encourage you to like it, hit the subscribe button with the bell notifications so that you can know when we go live again. We're going to be broadcasting again this Friday at 7 p.m. And Dan just brought up Raft, so we might be playing Raft for this stream.
Oh, I mean, I'm not going to be there Friday anyway.
Yeah, I know. But it's a game. It's like you build a raft and you have to like collect stuff and like survive in the middle of the ocean.
Yo, that sounds boring.
Wow.
Let me build a raft. Meanwhile, Call of Duty, League of Legends.
I mean, those are
Overwatch.
Fun. I mean, jeez. But we might be playing that. So, but regardless if it's that or something else, we'll be going live on Friday. So make sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification so that you can know when we go live again this Friday. But
with that said,
we broadcast every week on Monday, Friday, and Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we'll be live again coming up Friday. We want you to be there with us. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you guys.
I can see far away from where I've been. He says I see a potential. I see a potential in my eyes. I see a potential. I never lost sight of the reason why you're alive. You're alive. You're alive. We sing Jesus.